is out, maybe late. Do we need to, when do we usually ask the commissioners online to introduce themselves? Do we do it now?
Usually right at the start.
Oh, okay.
Just
So Rowan, if you could introduce yourself and your position here.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm Rowan Hawthorne, a planning commissioner.
Thank you. So unless there's any objections, can I approve the agenda by consensus? Yep. All right. Okay, let's consider the minutes from April 13th. Do we have those? Okay. April 27th, sorry guys, yeah.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes from April 27th. Second.
Okay. I thought we agreed for Sean and my maps to be,
No, we really
No.
we're moving forward with your map.
okay.
That was the motion that I, the motion.
That was
that
the
I made
motion.
Is correctly
Okay.
identified them. Although they did put all the maps up in that quad thing. but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Comments from the commission?
You have any?
I don't have any comments. Sean?
Yeah, I would
can
just
you present on,
give a quick update on Country Club Road that you may have seen that they have gotten it down to 2 candidates, DEW and Chinburg. They've sent feedback to both of those, and it's going to be weeks before we hear anything back. But at the last meeting, Maria, you were kind of interested in potentially providing feedback, and I think we should. I think as a commission, I think in the next couple of meetings we could consider that. At this point, I think the subcommittee they've done the due diligence on the financials for these 2 developers, and we can assume that they're both viable. And so we can start thinking about feedback
okay,
for when they produce their responses to feedback, and full city council starts considering things.
is there a timeline for the responses?
Yes, I don't have it up in front of me at the moment, but it's going to be at least June before they get back with anything.
Okay,
And then the city council itself isn't going to be making a decision on this August,
okay,
maybe. Obviously that's all these things, dates can change still. It's kind of fluid.
and so the idea now though is that they've looked at financials and they think Chinburg and DEW
Yep.
are both financially viable options.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then what is the process between now and potentially August where they make the final decision? What are they gonna be doing in that time?
At some point, when the developers they just kind of dumped a bunch of feedback on the developers, rather than spend our consultant time curating it. They put it out. They just gave everything to the developers. So developers have to kind of wade through everything and come up with their responses. Chinburg and DEW both need to come back with um, some different ideas. Like people wanted DEW to have, like they kind of had generic building renderings, and people want more specific. And obviously Chinburg didn't leave any soccer fields, so they have to come back with something with a soccer field. But then, yes, at this point, city council does need to review both kind of in depth, and they will have a discussion about it before the full council then is going to vote on which developer to proceed. And then comes contract negotiations. So that's going to be all fall, hopefully. That starts
Yeah.
by then. So that then construction starts next spring.
Okay. In terms of our zoning work, this whole area was zoned as, what was it? Urban residential? It had its own
Yes.
zoning district. So, do you think we still need to have that?
Well, we had, at last meeting, we had removed that as a,
Yeah.
but I think
Well, now it's just mixed use, I guess.
mixed use and whatever, yes, whatever is going in there. Whatever the plan is, we definitely would like to.
We don't want to get in their way.
We don't want to get in their way. No, we want that district out there to accommodate the apartment buildings that are going to have to be part of that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other comments from any other commissioners?
Over general business as well.
Oh, I thought comments came before general, but sorry, everyone in the public. Any comments from the general public about something not on the agenda?
It's a good segue from that report, but the level of assumptions built on assumptions, and the fact that the planning commission is the one saying we'll have to not get in their way. It really is the planning commission that's supposed to have written this plan in detail. So, but you've heard that before. So I want to say something different tonight than what I've said before, because the situation has changed. The CCR subcommittee narrowed to 2 developers their recommendation. The timeline calls for a council vote on July 22 and a development agreement signed by October 19. I think that schedule's not going to hold, not because of opposition, but because the site isn't ready for it. DEW Properties said in March that the quantities of hazardous materials on the site can't be identified, and the scope of remediation remains to be determined. So much for building next spring. That's not a minor gap to fill between now and October. That's the first question the process needed to answer before the RFP went out. Without it, no development agreement can accurately describe what a developer is agreeing to build on what land at what cost. The Route 2 intersection's never been studied for a traffic load of 200 to 300 unit neighborhood generates, not to mention soccer. That site may never be able to accommodate soccer if it's intended as a regional soccer destination. just because of the traffic issues. That study is not optional under Act 250 or under the Act 181 framework the city is pursuing. It will have to happen. The question is whether it happens before or after a developer agreement is signed. There's no master plan for the full parcel. The developer agreement will cover roughly 20 of the 50 to 60 acres that are developable. The city will be committing the rest of the land by exclusion without having decided what it's for. Again, your job. My analysis is that when the financing is stress tested, when the brownfield scope becomes clear, when the infrastructure costs are independently verified, the schedule will not survive contact with reality. The city will be back at the beginning, except the consultant contract will have expired unless renewed, which I would not advise. The institutional momentum will have dissipated, and the opportunity will have cost another 2 years at another round of fees. What I'm asking this commission to consider is not how to stop that process. It's what comes next when it stalls, and whether this commission, the Complete Streets Committee, and the Housing Committee want to be ready with something better, or whether they want to be caught flat-footed again. The three things that would allow this city to move forward confidently: a master plan for the full parcel, a real housing market study, and an affordability strategy, and a completed brownfield assessment, are not obstacles to housing. They're the foundation on which housing at this scale actually gets built and stays affordable. The Planning Commission has both the standing and the statutory mandate to say that. The Complete Streets Committee has standing on the Route 2 and multimodal questions. The Housing Committee has standing on the affordability structure. Together, those three bodies represent exactly the institutional counterweight that a consultant-directed transaction process is missing. I've left copies of the two documents for you. The longer one is an analysis of what's missing and what the planning foundation needs to look like. The shorter one describes specifically what this commission can do. I'm not asking you to stop anything. I'm asking you to be ready to build it right when the current approach runs out of road. Thank you.
When you say build it right, I just wanted to dig into this a little bit. We've heard a lot from you for the past handful of months around CCR. I can imagine a situation where build it right in Steve Whitaker's mind looks like everything that you've described, and putting forth a master plan from the Planning Commission, ready for us to have exactly what we want there. What happens next after that's done?
I would suggest and predict that it'll be a RFP that targets multiple
Great.
developers.
And who responds to that?
Can I finish my sentence?
Please.
Multiple developers, because it's a different developer that can do luxury townhomes. It's a different developer that can do a
Yeah.
tiny home village. It's a different developer that could do the civic infrastructure, the disaster resilience, emergency preparedness,
Sure.
the community center.
So
the
5 or
transit,
6
et
different
cetera.
developers that we pool together into a perfect, beautiful project.
Probably not perfect, but-
Who responds to that?
Some of the same people, if we didn't burn them out with this Primrose Path, then hopefully the same developers, plus O'Brien Brothers, which was recommended repeatedly by the public input, and were never invited to put forth a proposal.
Here's the situation that I can imagine, is that we put years of work into this and come up with something that the Planning Commission and the city and everyone that lives here thinks is a perfect plan. And we put it out there for RFP. And it is a completely unreasonable, from an economic perspective, possibility. And we get 0 applicants. So I consider everything that you say. And I deeply consider the real world and what is possible. What are people able to build there? So this has become more of a collaborative experience from the CCR subcommittee at this point, between the CCR subcommittee and developers, to bring their own ideas. Now, what we're setting up and establishing are the zoning district boundaries and the dimensional standards and the uses in that space. And it is a more collaborative experience. I fear that if we take the route that you demand that we take, we'll end up in a place where nobody proposes anything. It's not like if you build it, they will come, or if you design it, they will come. That's not how this works in 2026, from what I've seen. But thank you so much for your.
So that was,
Sorry?
I will later dissect the implications of what you just said.
Sure. You have the recordings and you can listen back and send me an email.
Okay.
Thank
I-
you.
Yeah,
Yep.
I just comment quickly. Brownfield, and every single interview with the developer, each one was asked about the brownfield issue, and they all addressed it, and we're not concerned. They have experience dealing with brownfields. They were confident that they could deal with it, either through repurposing that soil on site, ideally, or shipping it off to landfill. Also, that none of these developers would have gotten involved if they didn't feel that there was a viable project in what the city was asking of them.
Thank you, Sean.
Can I just ask, whether Sean or Mike, if something like, I don't really know what fall apart means. I mean, I understand if you look at big projects, right? And if there's going to be any low income housing, there's like there's capital stacks. You could apply for grants. I mean, this could take a very long time, but is the road going to happen anyway? Like the preparatory work to have, the intersection completed and the road, regardless of what happens with these, because it could be that these guys get to something and they walk away because it doesn't make sense or something, and we might have to start again, to Steve's point, right? But does the road preparation and those things to get the site actually ready for builders, does that happen regardless? Or is it contingent on the fact that we got a plan to build?
Yes and no. So we still have two options out there. So if we go with the Community Development Block Grant DR, the CDBG DR route, then we have to build at least 24 units of housing, of low-income housing. So that would have to happen at the site. So we would be committed to at least that much. The build grant doesn't have that requirement. But yes, you have to look at two separate pieces. The municipality is taking care of bringing infrastructure to the site. And then once it's on the site, it is the developer's responsibility to build that out. How many, the roads they have to build out, and they'll use CHIP or other financing to build out their roads, utilities, infrastructure, and all those pieces.
We're getting it up there.
Yep, we're getting it up the hill, but yes, there's no, certainly, I'm not going to sit here and say there's a guarantee that Country Club Road is going to work, because the war in Iran could send gas prices even higher, and next thing you know, we're in a recession, and the developers are like, we've got projects that'll work as soon as the recession turns around. That's not anything on our fault. That's not the brownfields. That's not the traffic, because there isn't a big brownfield issue and there isn't a big traffic issue. The traffic is already addressed. If this project were to go through Act 250, what would happen at Act 250 is they would say, at this point, you need to put in a traffic light at that intersection. We've already said, at some point, we're going to put a traffic light in there. We've already planned, budgeted, and designed for a traffic light at that intersection. The question is when. That is what Act 250 looks at, are environmental issues, and then they turn around and they say, all right, what's the mitigation for that situation? This development's going to create, this Costco is going to create more traffic. They don't just go and say, yeah, we're not going to allow Costco to build. They go through and say, okay, we'll agree to have Costco get built if they pay for a portion of the intersection to be improved and streetlights to be installed. And that's how these approvals happen. That's what would happen if this project goes through Act 250. Then that's what Act 250 would say. And we've basically already said, because our engineers have looked at the site, they said, at about this point, but it depends what you're doing, you're going to need it. And so if we are looking at 300 housing units, at some point in this spectrum, you're going to reach that point, which says you have to have a traffic signal at the bottom. So we built that into the plans. We've designed, engineered, and have everything ready to go in the back pocket. And so that's, it's this continual drumbeat of we haven't planned for traffic is just completely misunderstanding how traffic engineering and construction works. This is exactly how it works, and we've already accounted for it. We're not sitting here ignoring our responsibilities to say, well, that would be too expensive and we wouldn't be able. Nobody's saying that. We're saying that's going to probably be required and we're going to do it. And same with the brownfields.
No, thanks, Mike. I mean,
Yeah.
I was just trying to clarify that there's that preparatory stuff will happen, even if these particular developers, I'll tell you, it's absolutely true. People are asking for contingencies on asphalt and stuff. Like there could be big price moves and people may say, let's wait this thing out before we do something because the cost is, 30, 40% higher, but whatever.
We may end up getting our lumber to come down in cost,
Right.
but then our asphalt and all
Right.
these other pieces go back up.
Right. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the public? No? All right,
All right.
going back to our commissioners. Any other comments from our commissioners? No?
I have a
Oh.
couple.
Oh, yeah.
So, and some of you may have heard, hopefully you've all heard, and with apologies that I did not go and send out the announcement specifically to you. We had a lot of running around and I didn't, but our city plan, the Montpelier City Plan 2025, as you know, we were awarded the Vermont and the Northern New England Award. And in Detroit, I picked up the 2026 Vernon Dean's Honor Award for Outstanding Small Town or Rural Plan for a Small Jurisdiction for the Montpelier City Plan 2025. So we picked up the national honor for small jurisdictions.
I know.
So
Very cool, Mike.
that is.
Oh.
Oh.
No, we can see it.
Yeah, so everybody on television can see it. It is.
Yeah.
Can I tell you how much I like it? I mean, I love getting in. I can
It's fantastic.
I love that.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, James now has his hand up. James, did you want to go back to general business?
I did. I was struggling to raise my hand electronically fast enough. I just had a follow-on question, if I could, to Mike. I think it's fantastic that the city got the 5 million in CBDG DR funding. You mentioned that has a requirement that the 20 some housing units come online for us to be able to get that funding actually drawn down and into the city's coffers. What is the deadline? Because I've heard different things. What is the deadline for when those units need to be habitable to make sure that the city qualifies for meets the funding requirements with that grant so that we can get that money?
The deadline for that is the end of 2030.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
And the last thing I wanted to mention, well, I'll have two other things. One is apologies. I know a few folks have been trying to get in touch with me over the past couple of days. I was, of course, out in Detroit for a chunk, and then when I came back, I've been invited to speak in Quebec on Wednesday. So I've been working to finish putting together my presentation. I don't speak French, by the way. So this will be an adventure. So for everyone who's been trying to get in touch with me this week, if you can wait until the end of the week, tomorrow I will be heading up to Quebec, so I won't be able to get in touch. So, but if you can hold off or send me emails, I will try to connect with you. But this presentation is, it's important, and I'm trying to get ready for that. So.
No.
And I guess the only other thing I want to mention, we of course had our public hearing on the river hazard regulations. City Council has had one public hearing on the river hazard regulations, and on Wednesday will be the second. And if they don't make any amendments to the document, they would have the opportunity to adopt it at that time. So I just wanted to give you follow up on that process that we went through for the river hazard regulations, that it might be adopted on Wednesday, assuming no changes are made.
Did anything come out of those public hearings?
There was some public input, really going back to the initial premise of should we or shouldn't we allow conversion of non-conforming units to non-conforming residential units. And it didn't seem like council was willing to make that change. So
This is like the ground floor
Right.
residential conversions that
yeah,
they ban.
it's a weird loophole in FEMA's rules where the best example I like to use is for City Hall. So City Hall is non-conforming. You could put residential units in the basement. Well, you could before we changed our zoning. We could put residential units in the basement because it was a non-conforming commercial to a non-conforming residential. If we flood-proof this building, let's say we take all of our money, we flood-proof it, we make it a conforming, complying building for flood-proofing, well, a flood-proof building isn't allowed to be residential in those flood-proofed areas. And therefore, if you make it safe from flooding, it would be illegal to put those residential units in the basement. It's just a weird loophole.
In the basement.
It doesn't make sense
Okay.
in the basement. You can always put these units above. And what we just had were right after the flood, a number of commercial developers, commercial property owners were saying, I can't get businesses who are interested in going back in these spaces. I'm going to convert them to residential. And we're like, that's exactly, we're working really hard to tear down all these buildings that have residential units and elevate the other ones. And we'd falling farther and farther behind as we're moving this one forward. So the proposal was, you can certainly make that conversion, but you have to bring it up to code. And so that's the requirement. And so the other option and others have taken advantage of this is you can use them for short-term, so hotel, motel, short-term rental. So there are some properties on Main Street that made the conversion and they couldn't go to residential, so they converted to short-term. And so that will be taken up on Wednesday. So I just want to give everyone a heads up on that.
Okay, should we jump into our zoning maps? Does everyone have that link? And everyone has
I
computers?
can also pull it up. I guess I gotta go hit share. Back to
I do think mine is a little off.
That's what I was thinking.
I think I had my yellow, I'm comparing it to Sean's. My yellow is around College Street, and then Res 9000 stayed as is.
We were calling them something different too, right? Like low
Low and medium.
Yeah.
All right, so these are the four. Upper left was Sean's, upper right is current, lower left was Maria's, and the lower right was some staff. What I put together with a quick assessment. Now, if you go to this and you zoom in on any one of them, it zooms you in on the others and keeps you in the same location. So that's a little bit of what is trying to happen here. So that way you can track to see this section of Elm Street is this. We, of course, had to match the colors to what they are, but they are a little bit, yes. They may have changed slightly. Hopefully they didn't change too much. And I was not here for the last meeting, so
I'll just note that yours, I'm looking at the static map that I had put together and sent
Right.
to you and Sean, I believe, and then I sent those off to Mike and team. And those are similar from what I had. I see
Okay.
it's similar to what I had and what Nick has put together.
Okay,
But I'm not sure if either one of us captured what you had in mind.
I know. Well, I mean, this is very nitpicky, but Res 9 stayed as Res 9 in mine.
And that
That was like the biggest like point of contention, I think.
yeah, Res 9 / low density was staying the same.
Or no, low density was like, I think that's what I was calling Res 3000. And then medium was Res 1500. Like to Sean's equivalent. Like, I think my comments are in,
Yeah,
they're like in the minutes from last meeting. So,
So it looks like they did the combination of 1, 2. And the eastern and western gateways.
yeah, I didn't mention Res 9 in my comments because I didn't change it.
Well, it came up in our discussion.
It came up in the
It
discussion.
was in,
yeah.
we talked about that, and it seemed to me, I was interpreting what you were saying is that Res 9 was the low density.
Oh, no.
Is that not what you were
I
saying?
wanted to keep it as like,
Okay,
so there's like 3
you want
layers of
3 layers.
residential. And I think you have 2,
Yes.
right?
So low density, sorry, let me
It's like
ask if this is.
low, medium, and then,
Being. Or not even, or is this, there's still, because the way that I'm reading number 5 on the back of our minutes, residential districts should be rezoned to medium and low densities. Medium would extend all the way up to College, including blocks surrounding River Street, neighborhood around National Life and Terrace Street neighborhoods. That's what it looks like to me.
right.
And then low density would be for Town Hill, farther out Northfield and past Dairy Lane. And that looks accurate to me as well. So I guess I'm curious what is missing then.
I think, I mean, I'm not spelling it out in my comments
Mm.
because I didn't want it to change. So
Yeah.
these are the only the changes. So like Res 9, except for certain neighborhoods that I call out, like
I
your
see.
Terrace Street.
Right, you wanted to change everything along Clarendon.
Yes.
And that part. And I also, I thought that maybe you were also saying that, yes, we are keeping Res 9, but then we are extending the medium density out along Elm Street slightly and maybe even up the bottom of Town Hill. I-
I don't know.
But yes, I understood that
closer to Main Street.
you wanted to keep Res 9 as an option and to
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I'm like rereading my own. You're right. I think my low density is Res 9. Sorry, guys. Okay.
So the way they have it listed is Res 9 comes the same as Res 3000. That's
I know, I think it's what's
that-
confusing
That's
me.
not what you were thinking. though.
No,
yeah, you didn't have any Res 3, I thought.
I didn't have any
No.
Res 3.
It's
Yeah.
1500 and
Well, Res 3 and Res 1500 got combined,
combined into 1500.
right? Okay. And then I think there are some nitpicky things with the downtown too.
Well, there was this other idea that we were going to push out a block, right?
Yeah,
And-
and it happens sometimes, but not always.
Yeah.
Like Berry Street.
And this is actually the same as the static map that I had put together. I think that there's a little, there was a little bit of tension in terms of what we want riverfront and what we want
Right.
urban.
Yeah,
So I didn't capture urban going all the way out to towards the co-op on Berry Street. So it
across the tracks.
yeah, no, or even extended that far, sort of
Yeah.
south and east.
But I think the things that I would like to talk about, right? Like, I think we got Doug here. We had talked, that was part of it, right? Is like, how far does that extend along the river? Right? What does that look like? And into Sabin's pasture, like the part that isn't currently, zoned for residential. Bailey Ave, the other side of Bailey Ave, and the Redstone property that also comes out to Bailey Ave. And I think those are my main things. Those kind of connective tissues. Was there something, Leah? What did you brought? Oh, that's that Franklin. Did they do that
Oh,
properly?
Yeah, Franklin Street was kind of almost like a test case of how do we want this street that
redesign.
has, yeah.
So
Bunch
that's
of-
right though. Mixed use residential is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Need to look at all 4 maps, but
I know it's hard to go between all of them.
I suggest we just work off of one, guys.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that I think at this point we're considering Maria's map. We need to
There's
be
the-
tweaking the boundaries. As long as we understand what the actual districts are, like I think that's important that we have a firm grasp on what is medium and low, what we're talking about. If those are,
But I think we should look at the planning staff recommendations too, because
Yeah.
we haven't, I don't think we've,
I looked at them.
okay, you have.
They didn't go anywhere near, no offense, Mike, you weren't in that meeting. They weren't anywhere near what we were talking about. They're awesome, but we went off, we're going for housing.
But what is like, okay, I have more mixed use residential in mine.
yeah, and one of the things about when I was proposing mine, and I maybe didn't make this clear enough. I was trying to nail down the districts before nailing down the map, right? When I was putting forward districts, I wasn't excluding any possibility of expanding or changing the borders of those districts on a map. So, you know, having the mixed use residential go out, the arterials, I think is a great idea. I'm 100% behind that. And expanding urban is also very reasonable.
Yeah, I think the urban maps came out pretty similar. So how do you guys want to do this? Get down into these like details, like these like street by street.
I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah. Start in like a quadrant and work our way across.
Yeah, I think that focusing in on Maria's map this feels really good, and we did a lot of work through last meeting. During last meeting, I would like to. I don't know if Mike is able to do like a overarching view or overview of the staff recommendations and thinking there. I don't even know if that's a possibility or if we would have to go through each district and chat about them.
I mean, I can go through. So obviously you guys are going to end up making the decision and going with your recommendation. If there are conflicts between staff, that's just one that we may point out when we get to city council. We may point out where staff disagrees with planning commission recommendations, but you will ultimately be the ones making the decisions and making the votes. So we felt it was important for us to put our starting point, knowing that this is also something that can change onto paper, so we can start to, you know, at least talk about why we were making our thoughts. So one was looking down, we've got urban center. So the one thing I wanted to start with was my concern that I was seeing, and again, no offense, it was seeming like we didn't like character of the area. So we're going to throw out character of the area, and we're not going to have a future character of the area. And we're just going to put our cowboy hats and our spurs on, and we're just going to go Wild West on this place. And that was, as planning director, we did not get where we are. Yes, our regulations have created barriers that have caused problems that we're trying to work our way back. There's a certain degree of things that may start to happen. We want housing, but we open up a lot of area for commercial. All these areas that are mixed use residential, people can go in and say, I'm buying up that single family home and I'm converting it to commercial. Because it's too expensive to lease a place downtown. And this causes a loss of that core downtown, because now things are less walkable. We really want to focus those mixed use areas into very specific areas that I think will make the whole better. So my concern looking at this was really to start neighborhood by neighborhood and start to have the conversation that you guys had at the start when we said all of our regulations are based on current, which of course we had regulations that had non-conforming. We made them all match what's current, but none of them were future based. And so what I was trying to do working with folks is to start thinking about, all right, what is the future base? What would that look like? So the urban center one on mine, that's areas where you can have buildings to buildings, block style construction. You have zero setback on the sides. Where would that be okay? And what would we feel comfortable having that? And so for me, I looked at Berry Street, actually the lower part of Berry Street and the first parcel there on Stonecutters Way, all the way out to Pioneer Street, and thought about that area and looked at that. And you think at the other end, you've got River Street, which is really somewhat block style construction. This could change to townhomes and have other uses. It's still adjacent to the downtown. It would still support the downtown. It's out of the floodplain. So that's over time, we could have more growth in this area. So I thought this would be a strong case. This is also all in the designated downtown, this whole area. I thought that makes sense for expanding an area. If we wanted to expand an area that said that's an area that's okay for that, let's look at that area. The remainder of this I left as is. I did not convert Urban Center 2. And the reason why I did not is because this area is still floodplain and is still heavily floodplain. It's also some of the most iconic historic buildings in the downtown. For us to convert that to block style, for somebody to start coming in and saying, over time, we're just going to start putting in zero setback buildings next to the library or next to the church or next to it. To me, looking in the future, that's not what I would want to see in that area. I would want to see this area in the future really to be what it is today. And maybe there'll be some additional buildings in the back. So that was why I kept that one different, because Urban Center 1 is zero lawn setbacks, block style construction. And I could see that in Berry Street. I could not see that on Main Street. So that's a little flavor. Some of these, I left a lot of this the same. I did merge 1,500 and 3,000. But it looks like it's all colored the darker yellow. Should have been probably the lighter yellow. Actually, probably was the darker yellow because the density would change, but the lot size doesn't. So, but and then I combined 9,000 and 6,000 and made it 6,000. So in these other areas, the residential areas, and then I'll go back to some of the other ones. My thought was we already have densities that pretty much densities become less of an issue out here unless you're planning to build an apartment building. But if you're building up to 6 units, it doesn't matter. All we're really talking about is the lot size. So if we have a whole bunch of areas, so what they're zoned now is what you tend to see on the ground now. So that's the easier way of looking at it. So if you're in Res 6, you probably have 6,000 square foot lots or something close to that around you. So if you're Res 9, you might have slightly smaller lots. But if you go from Res 9 to a Res 3, you're going to have quarter acre lot, quarter acre lot, quarter acre lot, really small, less than an eighth, less than eighth. So it gets really significantly small. Now, if that's what you want the future to look like, then do that. But to get more housing, you don't have to make the lots smaller. We already have the density that allows, remember, for every single family home, we can make 6 housing units. There's a huge amount of potential growth that is possible with the zoning that we have today. This is just going to help to right size that and help get us a little more future. I could see 6,000 square foot lots on Town Hill being okay, or College Street being okay. And that was my thinking for combining the residentials. my next set was biggest set was probably with Riverfront. I'd commented before, I don't like the Riverfront. I made this, dark green. What have we got there? I have to close this up on my screen a little bit. I think that might be Gateway. Yes, it's Gateway because Gateway is where we are allowed to have gas stations. So I made this part, this neighborhood down here to be Gateway. I pulled out and made, so we have the dark brown, which is our mixed use residential. That's areas that can have those small shops and different things, but they're not major. And these have existed for a while. In certain areas, I said this makes sense to remain mixed use residential, these smaller mixed use residentials. But I also went with mixed use residential 2, which would be a new zoning district, which would allow places like National Life. You can have bigger buildings. The idea is it's bigger footprints. So Stonecutter's Way, National Life, the areas off the interstate, which were formerly Gateway. As it heads out, it would include Granite Shed Lane, Caledonia Spirits, the lower parts of Sabin's Pasture, because that area is an area we expect bigger buildings. So rather than Riverfront, which really had small footprints, small parcels, this is really trying to accommodate bigger buildings. So I would suggest this other mixed use residential 2. And we can certainly go through and flip flop if there are places that people say, this section of River Street shouldn't have big buildings. It should be small as well. We can make that exchange. So I think there's a lot we could talk about how to make little adjustments to this. And I'll point out the green of the Sabin's Pasture up here. And I talked to Doug briefly today. This is an area I would like to see like Country Club Road. We've identified the areas that are developable, left the areas that are not developable as rural. Those are all steep, but the developable areas we made Res 3. I think we should be able to do the same thing up here, identify those developable areas up here, make that Res 3, and I think that would make sense as well. I just didn't have the capability or the time to make that, but I did want to point that out. That was a conscious thing. We would need to work on that. But that was a lot of what I was trying to look at. And then really the only other significant change that I made was I created an industrial district, which included the areas where Cabot are over on Gallison Hill, and a little block that's over here off 3 Mile Bridge Road, whatever, it goes over to Middlesex. It's very industrial. The whole stretch is industrial. So the reason why is it actually goes back to the original Euclidean zoning of separating uses. And heavy industry is just something where you don't want to mix. You don't want to have tractor trailer trucks backing up where you have kids riding their bicycles. So you create an area that says we're going to put the industrial in here and we're not going to allow residential in here. There's no residential allowed in here because it's just not a compatible use. It's not a safe place to have it. And we would not want them in the same area that we've got these large trucks moving and doing these things. So it used to be part of the gateway districts. I kind of peeled it out because I didn't feel comfortable down here where we've got Agway and these other places. This is all gateway, and we can work on the details of that of the rules for this. And then actually what was gateway on River Street, I made mixed use residential because the big mixed use residential, because it tends to work. But we can make a lot of adjustments. But that was a lot of what I was thinking. I was trying to get back to your original thoughts, Maria, on let's make this future. What do we want this to look like in the future? And try to think ahead of, I want more housing on Berlin Street. we're going to increase the densities. What size parcel do we want? The parcel sizes we have right now are good. We just want to see, rather than a single family home, a 4-unit or a 6-unit. Well, we're kind of there. I would not want to see those buildings start to get converted into law offices and real estate offices. I would rather have Berlin Street remain residential. So that's what was going through my head as I looked through the maps was, let's make sure we're thinking in the future and that's what we want to have happen. And if the answer is, I do want that to happen, then Maria's map is the way to go through and say, well, actually, I do want to have more markets and neighborhood markets over on Berry Street. Okay, well, if that's the case, then we do need to adjust the zoning to be mixed use residential or mixed use residential 2. So that's the thinking that went into my map. It was just, this was 2 hours in an afternoon. So it was not something that you can't look at and say that's not right, because there are probably a bunch of things that need to get tweaked and adjusted. But those were a little bit of the thinking that went into my development of where I went, which is not as far as you guys went.
Thank you. I appreciate the summary there. I have 2 thoughts after your ideas. One is I keep going back to the minimum parcel size. I think it is, in my mind, it is relatively significant. When you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking about subdivision, and I looked at the parcels in their current minimums, and I think I calculated it's like 30 to 40% of parcels in each of those areas are currently not subdividable, simply because of their lot square footage. And so I see an opportunity personally in if we're pushing a 6,000 to a 3,000 square foot, a lot more opportunity for subdivision, not necessarily infill in the form of redevelopment, like taking an older, smaller home and knocking it down and building multi-unit, but taking a older, smaller home that's on a 6,000 square foot lot and splitting it into 2-3,000s and developing that. So I do think that there is a opportunity within bringing down the minimum lot size. That's one thought. And then my second thought is, I could see where potentially, and I think this is an important conversation to have, the spines of mixed use residential that we put into Maria's maps could be high density residential if we want to really be focusing on residential in those spaces.
Yeah.
That's like sort of one sort of pullback that I can imagine. But I think it's important to have these conversations.
And if I could just respond to your
Yeah.
first one, so you're absolutely right, and just the funkiness of the math of everything, and we knew this going in. It's hard to explain always to the public. So if you have Res 6,000, if you have an 11,000 square foot lot, 11,900 square foot lot, you can't subdivide because you need 12,000 square feet to create 2 6,000 square foot lots. So sometimes to be able to create some lots that are just slightly smaller, it would actually almost require the minimum lot size for a Res 6 to almost be about Res 3 or 4.
Yeah.
In order to be able to go through and say, okay, well, now your you've got your 11,000 square feet, your Res 6, I actually can make another lot. I can't make 2 more lots, but I can make 1 more lot. And if it's low enough, if you actually are 3, you actually could make 2 more lots.
Yeah.
And so I would say we certainly could look at these areas that are, because easier math with Res 6, to take Res 6 and go to a 4,000 square foot minimum lot size. I don't think I would go to a 3,000 minimum lot size, because I think you could then take some of these lots and triple them.
Right.
But I think going down a factor of maybe not a full half, but going down something close to that would allow a lot more potential to get some of these slightly smaller lots for people who currently have slightly bigger lots.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is an important conversation at the end of the day. It's like, do we want to make small incremental changes, or do we want to make some bigger changes? Now, at the end of the day, we are the ones who are putting this forth as a recommendation, and city council is the one that votes on it or not, or votes no. So I think there's definitely like all these considerations to make, and we need to decide which side of things we're on. Small incremental changes, larger changes for looking 30 to 40 years down the line.
You
I
know,
personally fall into that second category.
and just as a reminder, that the conversation was to get sort of like a draft map so we could have a listening session from the community. It wasn't like we weren't going to have like the planning department start redrafting anything, or we just wanted to have, hey, here's the map and here's some changes in density that we think would go along with that map. That was kind of what we were thinking, Mike.
We also thought about having multiple maps and provide that to the public, didn't we? And like, kind of like,
Actually, I think
see
that's
if people-
why I kept my districts in this mix for making this map. I think that was the reasoning for that,
Yeah.
even though Gabe's motion was to move forward with yours.
right. I like the idea of having multiple maps though, and like taking the temperature of the community. I think marching into city council with guns a-blazing, Wild West style, is not like it might not get us anywhere. But if we've already had these public input sessions and we kind of have like a consensus,
So I think it would be good if we all, I've been involved in one amendment where the city staff did not agree with us and it didn't pass.
Right.
Right. So I think it would be good if we all ended up in consensus. And I'll just say about the multiple maps, you see how confusing it is for us to even like handle a map. I think we should get to a consensus of this is what we think our best recommendation is. Now come in and tell us what you think. Like put little stickers and say, hey, my lot has a problem here. Like I don't want to see this because of X, Y, and Z. I think if you give them 4, it's like your awesome book, 10%, less democracy. Like we just end up in chaos because we're trying to do everything by committee. So if it takes us longer to do it, like I'd rather that we spend more time in here and get to our best recommendation that Mike and team and we all support, like that we're all on the same page with, rather than, pick which one of these you like the most, That's my thought.
Yeah,
I've just watched Country Club Road, guys. I mean, how long have you been working on Country Club Road? I mean, that's kind of what that looks like, right? It's like, do we really want to do this for 5 years or do we want to do it in 1?
Yeah, and I think my main pushback, as I said, is really just focusing back on, is this really what we are thinking of for the future of Area X? And as I said, if the answer is yes, then a lot of my, we're not going to object to if that is where the commission thinks.
I don't think you're actually really far from where we were. You just weren't in the conversation last time. And so I think I think it's all pretty similar.
Yeah.
There are some little differences, like the riverfront. I'm just reading it. Like you don't like riverfront. We all really liked riverfront. I guess we don't know why there's a problem with it. You know what I mean? Like you weren't there with.
But he's also introduced mixed use residential too.
Right, which maybe
Which could also be
Which
called
I could just we could just leave that as riverfront and that becomes.
I think you have like a first idea of what riverfront means.
Maybe it's change of uses or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we didn't have your input last time. So
Yeah, I was just trying. The reason why I created the mixed use residential 2 district partly was because of trying to consolidate districts. And so we have National Life in its own district as gateway, even though National Life is not a gateway. I was trying to think of, but it's big buildings where we're probably talking about the opportunity for different, and that's what I was kind of thinking of for that area. And that was why I started thinking, okay, well, we've always had the discussion of Stonecutter's Way is so different than Berry Street, but they're the same zoning district. Well, if we start thinking of, all right, here's big mixed use and here's little mixed use, that helps to clean things up a little bit. And maybe that's the end. And maybe it's not, but that was why we were thinking. Oh, and the last one, I did want to go through and say, because we had some comments on Country Club Road, I wasn't going to touch the zoning for Country Club Road. And the reason why is simply because we already have these proposals out, and I don't want to
I don't think did we recommend anything on Country Club Road?
Well,
Just
yeah,
to make it safe part.
I don't even think we
no,
talked about it.
we'd recommended, rather than having a bespoke district. And maybe what happens is that in the future, like rather than make a change now, that in the future, that, or what is it, urban
It was urban
residential.
residential. Yeah.
is this bespoke district that encompasses the 70 acres of the of this development, and it just I in my mind I wanted to move away from a bespoke district.
No, I agree. That is what we should be doing. At this point, we've got developers who are developing in second rounds of design. And if we start going saying, hey, maybe we're going to go and change the density, or maybe we're going to change the setbacks, or maybe we're going to change the minimum lot sizes,
Right.
it might be just like, let's wait and see what they come out with. And maybe it's kind of backdooring the zoning a little bit into the project. If we all look and, hey, that's a great project, that kind of matches mixed use residential too, or that kind of matches urban center 1 or 2 or whatever, we can just go through and say that's our match. But yes, I agree that it's not best practice in planning to have. And in fact, this was a discussion that came up in 2018 for Sabins Pasture, because people kept saying, we'll just make it as Sabins Pasture will be its own zoning district, as Sabins Pasture zoning district. And we said, no, you can't do that. Sometimes it gets called spot zoning. It's just like we shouldn't do it that way. But yes, I agree.
And Mike, one thing along these lines, and Doug too, for Sabin's pasture, that rather than try to, make the lines follow the geography just so, if we have regulations that limit steep slope development, it all gets zoned the same, and what can be built on can be built on.
Yes, because we have a lot of areas. Anyone who lives on the north side of Berry Street, there's no district for the cliffs and
Right.
the ridges.
Right.
There's no special district that says, oh, that's rural because you can't build on it. You just can't build on it. It's still part of res. It's either part of Riverfront or it's part of res 6,000, I think, up there.
So I think in order to kind of like steer the conversation a bit towards more productive, I feel like we could all just talk generally. But what if I want to break our map into quadrants right now and take the easiest quadrant, which I thought would be the National Life quadrant, because it only involves 3 districts total. So I am curious what everyone, so imagine that National Life gets sold to somebody, like the business leaves town. What would you want to see on that hill? Housing or more office parks? Like what do you guys think? It's a huge lot. It's massive.
I mean, I would hope another employer, that would be a disaster. But if it happened, I hope another employer would go in there and fill it up with employees. That's what I would hope.
Right.
Another like job center.
But maybe
It needs to be allowed, right? I mean, we need that,
Oh, for
obviously,
sure.
yeah.
But there's a lot of that National Life parcel.
Oh, they have a
that
huge lot, right?
That's the thing. It's
is
not
nothing, right? It's woods. It's
a bunch of fun trails.
it's I love my dog again.
Trails. But they're not yours, you know?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
like Sabins. It's
Yeah.
not yours.
Oh yeah. I
It's not
may have
actually.
I may have been flip in my.
But I'm saying, I think everyone kind of like assumes that it will just go into perpetuity as it is, but it's actually not parkland, you know? If it gets sold to another developer or another commercial entity.
Right, and they could they could
What could they do
decide
to-
to sell a portion of it that they don't need for the office building.
And then what?
And my, I want things to be as flexible as possible. You know, if somebody says, if we have somebody years down the line say, you know what, Montpelier is an up and coming place and we want to move our business there and we're going to stick it out there next to National Life. I'd like them to be able to do that. If somebody says, you know what, let's put a neighborhood there. Like, well, and that, because that's what Montpelier needs at that moment, like, then I'd like them to be able to do that.
Mhm.
It's kind of a cop out. I know that's.
I know, but that's kind of like a mixed use.
Yeah, and
Or I guess, I mean, this gateway, every district allows housing, right? Housing is permitted use in every district.
Yes, I'm just,
Okay.
I can double check what's the
So if it's zoned at
densities.
gateway, it can still be residential.
yes,
Okay.
Or that's eastern, we need western gateway.
Yeah, the residential uses are the same in Eastern Gateway and Western Gateway currently as they are in mixed use and all of our residential, where multi-unit dwellings 15 plus and congregate living 10,000 square feet or more is conditional. Everything else is permitted. That falls under the residential categories.
That's super interesting. It would put a cap 15. Anyway, that's a totally separate conversation about a use table, but
Yeah.
boy, if I wanted an apartment building, wouldn't you want it someplace like with good access?
Well, it's currently fully permitted in Riverfront
yeah,
and our urban centers, all
yeah,
three.
yeah.
That 15 plus. unit.
Anyway, so that's an aside.
Yes. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any thoughts about
You know,
National Life law?
I think it's an important conversation to have, especially with the size of the parcel. I mean, you consider it's not just the trails, but if you go all the way out Northfield Street to underneath the highway there, if you look up to the right, that field is also that same exact parcel.
Right.
So there's also, if you're going up the winding road from the front side, from the north side up to, there are parking lots and other administrative buildings that, who knows, at some point in the future, those could be residential. So I think that I like what Sean had to say about thinking 30 years in the future and being very flexible.
And I think like having, again, because a lot is so huge, having another like large corporate job center would also be good.
Yeah.
And it'd currently be allowed. Like National Life could replicate itself, right? In
Yes,
Gateway.
yeah, I mean, certainly under its existing zoning, it could. It isn't, under the existing zoning, it's not really thought of as mixed use, although it is allowed in the use table. It
Yeah.
really isn't envisioned in that way. We did talk about this when we talked about the village residential. We did talk about, it's like, well, where would another place be that might be appropriate? And we were like, well, it could be National Life, but we didn't make any adjustments to the zoning at that time. But that was to avoid that issue of having this unique zoning district. Maybe it could apply somewhere else, and it was mentioned.
Utilities, do they run all the way down that hill?
Yes.
Min parcel size for the gateways is 20,000 square feet.
Yep, and 1 unit per 4,000 square feet.
1 unit per 4,000?
For 4,000 square feet. It's kind of an interesting number. Just for perspective, before 2018, this was, I believe, zoned office park. So it really was just considered
Office.
the office.
Huh.
And then we kind of roped it in somewhere else, or at some point it was, whether it was at
Okay.
that time or
If
before.
you look at the top wall, there's some pretty good buildable. I mean, there's
Oh, yeah.
extending further along from where they currently are, but then over on the other side of it as well, there's also kind of a flat spot. There's quite a bit.
Yeah, even just wrapping around their existing parking lot, you could redevelop around that entire parking lot with larger buildings. you'd have to address the parking, but
Right. So does everyone kind of like keeping that as, or I guess making it the new combined gateway? Yeah.
What are we missing from that? I think Mike's proposal, staff proposal was mixed use residential in that space. So what would we be missing?
I
One
was
way
at
or
the
the
mixed
other?
use residential 2, mixed use residential 2.
I think that the issue with Gateway, right, is that the lot size is like how many units can you actually put up there is going to be significantly limited, probably compared to, I don't know what your dimensional standards are on mixed use too. But I imagine that, Yep.
Mike's.
Yep.
Yep.
Don't look at me.
Oh, no, I wasn't looking at you. I was looking at the map on the screen. Sorry. I was looking through you, Maria. Uh, yes, that it, I don't know what your dimensional standards are for that, but I imagine that it's, not a 4,000 square foot minimum lot size.
no, I was expecting it would be probably very similar to the mixed-use residential, which is 1 unit per 1,500.
Right.
The difference being the lot size would be slightly bigger.
Oh, that's
And
right. It was
the
20,000.
allowances
It's a 20,000 square foot minimum lot size in Gateway with
in
a
Gateway right
4,000.
now. Yep.
Yeah.
But they could do more. If there was an employer that wanted to come in, that's also an option inside of that mixed use.
Yeah, that's part of what we would have a discussion when we start writing the detailed rules. If we decided to have a mixed use residential too, we would have that conversation of, okay, what is the boundaries of what we would allow? And it could be as big as we want. Right now, Caledonia Spirits is a big building. You've got a lot of these ones that are allowed. We have a maximum footprint size, but we also have, if you go to the DRB, you can get the exemption and go up to additional size. What really counts at that point is making sure the architecture and the design is doing well. But we may be able to have a conversation about that if we talked about having all major site plans went through design review. Then you might be able to go through and say, okay, well, we don't need the DRB approval if we've got a DRC review that goes in place. But we can talk about that when we get down the road. But the thought is, these would allow for bigger buildings. I think what we have now for zoning as a gateway, just kind of filling in the blanks, it's kind of creating a little more suburban outcomes. Large lots, bigger buildings, probably thinking a little more Williston, South Burlington look of, if you were to look at the zoning, kind of get a feel for it, as opposed to, we would like this to kind of build in a little bit more of a tighter knit. Now, we could certainly go either direction. We could say, hey, I kind of like that, or I kind of would rather see it with smaller lots, higher densities, because if this is going to build out, it could be its own little new neighborhood. And that's the point of the mixed use, is that if people live up here, we don't want this to distract or detract from our downtown. But at the same time, people who live up here would probably like to have a coffee shop and would probably like to have a sandwich shop or whatever. We would want to have some of those mixed uses and have some actually large employers. This already has a large employer. It's really close to downtown. It's adjacent to downtown. People have talked about running a gondola up there. Hey, that I still like that idea. But these are some of the ideas. It's unlike, say, Country Club Road, which is not really that adjacent to the downtown.
Yet.
You do want to have that mixed use because you do want to have people have the ability to say, all right, I'm not getting in my car to go drive to grab a cup of coffee. I'd like to just go over and grab something and sit at the cafe. And or in this recreational area, wouldn't it be great to be able to rent a bike or skis from Onion River?
What about the urban, what are we calling it? A Country Club Road?
It was urban residential.
They're not, you couldn't have office buildings in there though.
You could have some, even though it was labeled residential, it actually could have some commercial in there, but it was primarily meant to be residential with certain specific.
But that couldn't fit over here. That's what I'm asking. over here.
Yeah, I mean, because urban residential, the National Life building itself is
Too big.
not allowed at
Yeah,
Country Club Road.
yeah, okay.
We can't have,
Yeah.
can't have the Hilton show up and
Right.
say, we're gonna drop this right in.
So I have two questions. One, so Mike, last time we were talking about riverfront kind of being, I think we've discussed this before, where riverfront could potentially be this, bastion of development where we have these, apartment complexes right on the waterfront. Maybe there's like some connection to the river again, either through like kayak rentals or, so it could be like a new hub for the city. And I am wondering if there's such a thing in zoning where, I don't know if this is like through like permitted uses or what, but you allow either small commercial, so your coffee shops or delis. So you can either have like a 2,000 square foot commercial or like a 40,000 square foot commercial. Like you either want it to be huge or you want it to be like a mom and pop shop. Is that a thing? Because I think
Yeah.
like the worst to me anyway. And I just went to Agway today, so I am a supporter of Agway, but having some type of, like Target or something like, open up on like in this National Life campus would be not good. But it's currently allowed in Gateway. That's what Gateway is,
Yes.
right? So are there ways within zoning of kind of limiting the type of commercial, I guess, or the size of the commercial?
It's easier to limit the
And-
size. And this came up a lot for discussions 10, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago now, show my age. Big box retailers were coming in. What can we do? And you can go in and say, in Eastern Gateway, commercial retail is allowed up to 40,000 square feet. And that's going to cap the box. Now, Walmarts are 80, 120. A super Walmart might be 200,000 square feet. I mean, these can be ginormous buildings. So by capping it, you're not saying we're writing this because we don't want Walmart. We're just saying we're capping this at 40,000 square feet because economics, we want to see this scale of development. That's our future character of the area. And we're going to establish this is what we would like, and we're going to make it work. Now, the question then comes up from the economic standpoint is, are we picking a size that actually works for businesses to be successful? Some of them might say, in order for me to make my Agway work, I need at least this many square feet to move this much product to make that work. Now, that's a question we would have to figure out by doing some homework of where do we want to make that upper thing. But I will say in the downtown, what you find a lot more are actually spaces in the downtown that used to be 5,000 square foot get subdivided into
Right.
half or thirds, because what a retailer wants is really, I just do a niche. I just need enough
Yeah.
space so I can make my soup, so I can sell my soup, and I'm going to make money because I've got 1,000 square foot.
Right.
And they're very successful. And then that's how you end up with, 12 great restaurants on one short stretch, because they took these 5,000 square foot spaces and divided them up to make these shotgun
Right.
shops that really give you a lot of variety, and each one is successful because they have lower overhead, lower, to make the project work. So I will say it does work to make things smaller. The question would come up, we would have to work very closely with the economic development folks to go through and say, where would be a good cap if we were talking about Country Club Road, or if we're talking about up here on the hill. And there may be areas where we further subdivide this to go through and say, because this is too hard to make it work, we kind of end up with a riverfront where we end up with big buildings and small buildings, and they don't really work. And riverfront includes gas stations that we don't want over here. We may eventually come in and go through and say, okay, for this area, it would be very likely we would split it to two zones. One zone that would allow the really big buildings like National Life. If we want another National Life building, it would have to be over here. And everything around it is going to be this zoning district because these mixed use areas are going to support those two buildings or three buildings, whatever's the other thing, rather than to try to have one zoning district to allow both 100,000 square foot buildings and little ones.
Well, I guess you can limit the types of commercial within a zone.
Yes, so we tend to group into big groups. It works well. So we'll have retail and we'll have office. So you could go through and say, we're only going to allow big office buildings. We're not going to allow big retail buildings. That would be fully allowed in zoning. That's very clear. What you can't get into is picking the winners and losers.
Right.
So that's where it gets to be an issue. It's like, oh, we like that because that's, so and so's family business is growing and we like,
Right.
but we don't want Walmart to come in, or we don't want Family Dollar to come in. We have to be even-handed as it goes to enforcement. So if based on size, easy. Based on use, easy. Those are easy things that we can work in.
I'm trying to figure out how to kind of like merge the ideas that we talked about last week about riverfront with your idea of turning this National Life property. Like, can we use our ideas for riverfront and apply them to National Life?
Well, I think that is a lot, really, that is very much like similar to what you were getting at, though, right? Is that
Yeah.
this mixed use too is what you were talking about as riverfront.
Right.
That yes, you wanted there to be the potential for large mixed use buildings.
But
at
do
the
we
end
want
of-
there to be like all of these kind of like spread out? Because I like the idea of riverfront being consolidated at the river,
Right.
But then it also seems like this would be a good use for National Life. But then now you're starting to get like a city that has like a bunch of different things in different parts.
I mean, I when I was going through, I tried to make the districts as generic as possible. Like I got rid of riverfront from my proposed districts because why not have some more generic district that encompasses some area of that? And I think that's what's happening here with Mike's mixed use 2, is that mixed use 2 is what you want from riverfront with a generic name that can be applied to other parts of town. And you're not saddled with baggage of it being called riverfront.
Right.
So it
And-
could be, the riverfront could change to mixed use too, and this property,
National
National
Life.
Life could be mixed use too.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I think where riverfront has more permissive dimensional standards and uses, we should make sure that we're applying that to mixed use.
Yeah, and hopefully
As we discussed last week,
Super.
I don't know what the actual riverfront. That's kind of like we came up with this new idea for
Sure.
riverfront that Mike was not here.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
But I don't know if you're getting confused because you're like,
No,
wait,
I'm
who
fine
said
with
what?
that. You got
Okay.
we're just talking about that, well, you heard Maria talk about river
Yeah.
basing. You've been in all those meetings, but there's opportunities for redevelopment all the way down Stonecutters Way, all the way down, connecting to your project at Country Club Road.
Yeah, and I think the issue you are trying to grasp is the reason, rightly or wrongly, in 2016, we eventually started talking about neighborhoods because we were like, all right, this is riverfront, but this part of riverfront is this neighborhood, and this part of riverfront is this neighborhood, and this is what we want to see out of this one.
Yeah.
And I don't think we got there because you wanted future based, and we should have been doing a better job of thinking future rather than describing the present. And I think that was why we ended up there, because otherwise you end up with 27 zoning districts because, well, we're gonna have this one because it's focusing on the riverfront, but this part isn't on the riverfront, so it's a different zoning district, or we'll make it a different neighborhood. And you can see how quickly it piles up and becomes this clunky thing that we have today with neighborhoods and districts. And I think it works, the neighborhoods and districts, but it is an extra layer of confusion for the public. It's very clear for those of us who do the administration and the enforcement. It's easy for us, but it is an extra layer that we have to explain to the public when those types of matters come up, which they don't come up a lot, but they do come up.
So I'm going to use the term permissive zoning because that's what we talked about, riverfront being permissive zoning. Do you guys think National Life should have the permissive zoning label applied to it? Sean, I know. Yeah.
I mean, do we think that everything in town should have that label?
Yes,
applied to it?
no, yeah, Sean. How about everybody else?
I
Oh, Aaron's on, you guys.
Why isn't he running this?
Aaron.
skate.
He snuck in.
Look, I can't do it. No, I'm sorry. I was traveling all day today, and I actually got into town about 15 minutes before the meeting, and I was like, I can't do it. I gotta decompress a little bit. So sorry, I'm late.
Well, feel free to pipe up, Aaron.
Okay,
You have
okay.
ideas. Okay, so permissive zoning applied to National Life. What do you guys think?
I don't think there's any reason for it to be restrictive. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but now what is permissive zoning?
I think that's what we're calling
know?
this
Urban
mixed
center-
use
oh,
residential
mixed use.
two and
Okay.
riverfront. I think for our own kind of like internal ideas, I like this idea of calling it permissive zoning.
Can I ask why we have a mixed use residential and then a mixed use two, Mike? Like, what was the thinking of like?
It's
two?
just a size difference. So you think of mixed use residential today, we have mixed use residential up at the Meadow on Route 12 on Elm Street. You're talking about relatively small mom and pop scale. You could have law offices and real estate offices, but you're not talking about Caledonia Spirits.
Okay, so
And-
two's
and-
more permissive, is
And,
what you're saying.
Yeah, two
More
is,
permissive.
yeah, two, it's allowing bigger.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd necessarily say more or less permissive. It's just, it's focusing on what's the future that we want to see in the upper part of Elm Street. I don't think people want to see those get removed. And think of the Connor's building there with the Nature Conservancy. That's, in my mind, that is mixed use residential 2. Those are bigger
Yeah.
buildings. I think the Meadow would come in with pitchforks if we were going to have a building that size proposed for that section of.
I mean, the good thing
Elm
about
Street.
that naming is that you can apply it to these other places that we might want to, right? So,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there may be areas that get adjusted. I mean, we look at Northfield Street is currently part of mixed use residential, the smaller one.
but maybe it should be.
Maybe that's one that we talk about and say, well, look, we're looking at these bigger buildings up here. There's already some bigger buildings at the bottom. Maybe it would be more appropriate to be a 2. So I think we can certainly talk about making other adjustments, but that was the thought between the 1 and the 2 is simply a difference of the size of what would be anticipated and expected in that future vision state.
So I mean, I think that's a good proposal, right?
Yeah. So then, okay, we will get to River Street. That is in the next quadrant. How about the strip that's next to, I don't know what it's called, kind of like where when you get off 89,
So Memorial Drive.
Memorial Drive.
Yeah, and so that was why I had the similar conversation in my head about, we've got this, we also have from the school out to Department of Labor and these other buildings. We have no idea what the state will do going forward into the future. Will they eventually unload these buildings and open this area up for someone else to come in and redevelop it because the workforce changes? So I thought the same thing for National Life. I thought was the same thing for down here for Memorial Drive.
So
These are big buildings. But right now, there's no residential uses in there. Yes, there is floodplain. Everything would have to be built to flood codes. But I don't think it would be a bad idea. It's next to the bike path. You could build some good
so
housing.
instead of gateway altogether, it's mixed use residential? Is what you're saying?
That was where I was thinking. I was like, well, you know, we're going to address the gateway issues through design standards or whatever else. Plus, they're also not really on Memorial Drive. They're on these secondary roads that come off Memorial Drive.
Right.
I think one of the things I like about this approach is that it sort of, what I'm seeing is it's converting small portions of the gateway at the same time to more focused industrial, where at the moment it feels like gateways are pretty permissive for industrial and larger areas. So I think if we have a more expansive mixed use residential, 1 or 2, and then highly concentrated industrial, that feels generally like a good idea to me.
But the industrial pockets are pretty small.
The what?
It's not like, I mean, the industrial pockets are like,
They are.
you know, like we're not gonna have like a major
No, I
active
know, but it's
industry
taking the current,
this designation.
but those are currently in our current designations, regulations, they are gateway, aren't they?
Yeah, they're in the they're allowed in Eastern and Western Gateway because we do have, like, Green Mountain Power is down on the western side. Most of the industrial's on the eastern side.
Yeah.
I see what you did. You did the entire gateway as mixed use. This
Right.
new tier. Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
But I'm not sure that I wouldn't go back to River Street Route 302 to bring that back to Gateway, because it does have gas stations and it does have very auto oriented uses that
This is Eastern Gateway.
yeah, we're talking Eastern Gateway now, but Gabe was just mentioning I converted all of the gateway to this
Got it.
thing, and I think I may have overdone it a little bit on Route 302 without really kind of thinking like maybe that because of the uses that exist today. But again, we look at a future state. What's our future state? Is our future state to have gas stations and car dealerships out here? Pretty likely that that's what it's going to be. And if we're going to allow it somewhere, this seems like the most appropriate place to do it.
Right.
So I would probably on the western side, but we're talking the western side, but on the eastern side, we'll have a future conversation on that.
I mean, I worry about the mixed use residential, like the permissive zoning of detracting from the downtown, like detracting from infill and building up the downtown. If you can build, you know, a large apartment building close to the highway, like that might seem nice to a developer versus trying to build in downtown. But I think, you know, like urban planning principles, you want more development downtown. So I do worry about Memorial Drive starting to take away from that urban development that I would prefer to see. Sean. The poker face.
Sorry, I would love, like, I want to see the parking lots in downtown get turned into,
Yeah.
you know, nice apartment building, like some really nice 5/1s on Court Street. You know, that would be awesome. But if somebody comes in right now and says, I can make housing in Montpelier, but I have to do it out here, I will not stand in their way.
See, I don't know. What do you guys?
I mean, there's so many factors when you're trying to do a development, right? It's like, is the parcel available? Is it available at a price that's reasonable? Is the seller a true seller? Like, are the neighbors gonna like drag me through everything? It's in a historic district. Am I gonna have to jump through all kinds of hoops? I mean, you know, there's all kinds of, like I was thinking about this, like with hotel, like we need a hotel, right? We need a hotel downtown. But like a lot of times we travel, we go to Hampton Inn. I like got the waffle maker. It's pretty cool, but they don't put Hampton Inns like that's not the spot that you put in the downtown, right? They're going to have like a Hilton downtown. But would it be a terrible thing if we had, we had one of those like in the gateway and people can make waffles when they come to? No, I think that'd be great. Right? I'm just saying, like, you don't know what the economic motives are.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're looking at like the bigger, the bigger companies, they just are like, okay, based on the demographics, we have a dot somewhere around here. Let's go find where we can find like everything lines up. We don't have to get like something rezoned. And I think to Sean's point, like making things as permissive as possible, because we're not going to know. Like when you guys had Caledonia Spirits come, I mean, they came, right? But there happened to be the right opportunity. And so, those are business decisions. We can't control
Right.
that, but we can make it permissive for it.
Yeah. But we can decide where development goes,
We can.
I find myself more in Sean's boat here, where I would rather be more open to opportunities than shutting down. I'm just looking at that gateway and that left side as you're coming in. There are 4 parcels there. It's the first is the Vermont State Liquor Control, and then Green Mountain Power, the state state building, which is the Department of Labor, and that's the high school.
And they got a massive parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
a lot of it's floodplain, but yeah, we certainly
Sure.
opportunities to move
you
closer and
build up. You
Yeah.
put a garage. Everybody's parking, right?
so if any one of those were to get redeveloped in the future, there's a lot of space, but it's 4 parcels. It could be subdivided, I guess. I can imagine a very interesting future where, sure, there is a housing development or a hotel. And it will never become a new downtown for Montpelier. So it could be a little bit of a commercial space right off of the highway. I think that our downtown, this is my opinion, is attractive, enticing, and close enough to get those folks to come in and go to our restaurants and etc.
Okay, so people so that stretch, also adding it to our
actually,
permissive zoning district.
Yes.
Okay, how about Northfield Street? Mike has, so I kind of sliced these neighborhoods up a little bit. The ones that are closer in are the new medium density. And Mike is moving them to Res 6000
From 9.
from 9.
Sean's pushes that 9 to 3. And Maria's is split.
Maria puts theirs at 1,500, some of it, which is
Yeah.
fine.
I mean, that development that's there already is very dense.
It is.
Yeah, a lot of the blank area that's out there is that steep hill that you see. If you read Northfield and you've got this large blob next to it, a lot of that is
Between Northfield and Hill Street.
that's a big hill.
Yeah. Wasn't one of those.
That's the one Habitat for Humanity
gonna
wanted
say.
to build a road up to the top and put units up there.
Right.
There's not much room in there for.
They could fit about 120 units, but that was
Oh, they gotta go. Oh, they go up to that.
but they
hilltop.
have to go all the way up to the top, and it was going to take a lot of engineering on the road.
Yeah.
And so we never got past the road. If we could get that road, they had like a 15% road, and we were like, you got to get that down. And
What's this right here? This is right behind. Is this that senior center or something? What's this right now?
yeah, that's in Independence Green, and I think there was something about that one that we made some adjustments to. Yeah, I think there's a hill back there, though. I think there's some topography in that area.
It does, yeah. But there's something right across the street from it.
Yep.
It's built.
Yep.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, from an infill standpoint, again, this is really from my standpoint, Res 9, Red to Res 6, is because it's really about lot sizes. This is all single family homes almost exclusively through this area. And every one of them can, under the zoning today, be a sixplex. So it has a lot of potential to infill. The only question is, how many building lots do we want to allow? Currently, they're mostly on 9,000 square foot lots. We've done a little bit of our adjusting that we talked about earlier, make it a 6,000 square foot lot that's allowed. Maybe we can have a few subdivisions that fit in there. But for the most part, people are going to be working within the existing building lots that they have for a lot of the existing subdivisions.
And my thought was that Northfield Street neighborhood that's close to National Life, just being there, it feels very similar to like the College Street neighborhood. And so I have those all kind of like, or Terrace Street, it's mostly single family homes on like tree lined streets. I don't see that it doesn't seem very different than those neighborhoods, but it does seem different to me than, the Town Hill.
You were calling it 1,500, or that was your high density? Or no, you you never used high. That was
No, there's
medium
no
density.
high
It
density
was medium-
residential.
Medium density.
Medium density.
I love that. So,
It is, but it just seems like a suburban kind of street. And so I kind of wanted it to match the other suburban streets.
so how come the neighborhood right next to it though? Was that what you wanted actually? The neighborhood to Freedom Drive? Why wouldn't they both be the same?
I think I probably would have it as that density as well. And then it goes to rural.
And then it goes rural,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are buying, people who want to downsize from, their big Victorians in Montpelier, I think are buying these smaller units out on Northfield.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I'm kind of also thinking about the independence and freedom and not sure. I mean, that's where all like the condos are and stuff, and then that's where
Yeah.
the transitional living facility or whatever it is up there. So don't I don't see a need to make that division between the colonial circle and then that kind of independence and freedom circle.
I agree.
I don't think you can have a place called Independence and Freedom without it being maximally permissive.
There we go. I agree. I
That's
think
what
that-
renaming the zone. It's now called maximally permissive.
No, you can't do that.
I think with the idea of having medium density all the way out to the highway, sounds great to me. There is quite a bit of opportunity out there for subdivision and more dense building.
And so taking out that division that's in mine, then it becomes a matter of, Mike had it at res 6,000. And I have it going
Basically
my
a 1,500.
1,500, 3,000 hybrid.
Well, I think this comes back to we have to decide what our districts are, and so we hadn't really talked about the res stuff yet, about Maria's medium and low, Mike is keeping 1,500 and 6,000. Is there any 3,000 on this map? Don't think so.
Mine is 3,000, 15 and 3,000 were merged to become 3,000. The density would probably be 1,500, but the minimum lot size is 3,000. So that was, but minimum density becomes less, and then the 6 and the 9 were combined to become 6.
So yeah, that's something that we have to we have to decide what are our res districts going to be. Do we go with 1,500? Well, we'll go with Maria's medium and low? Do we want to keep 6,000 in the mix? What are people feeling? Thinking.
I don't think our city is very big. I think it's relatively small. So that pushes me towards not having, towards having less variety. I really like the idea of medium low, or personally high medium, but having those two as separations, and then we will also retain rural outside of that. So that feels like three residential um, sizes, or that go along with dimensional standards and uses.
Well, I think Sean's trying to get to like, but what does medium and low mean?
Yeah,
Sure.
because really, we with both Maria's and Mike's, we've got medium and low.
Right. There's
So which ones do we go with?
I'd be
That
more
meaning-
likely to call them high and medium. Agreeing with
Yeah.
him.
Oh, yeah.
And because my guess is
Mer-
at some point the political pushback will show up, and somebody's going to want to create a low. I doubt there's anybody, if we have medium and low, that anyone's going to come in and be pushing and saying we want to make a new district that's high. And really, looking at the densities we have now, I've been looking at other ones from around the state and around the country. Our 1 unit per 1,500 is 27 units an acre. That's pretty high no matter what city you're in. So that's really a high density. So if we're at 1 unit per 1,500, that's high density.
Maria is very intentionally not calling it high density.
I'm also saying it's not 1,500. It's my new 1,500, 3,000 hybrid. I'm not saying that we're moving 3,000 into 1,500. I'm saying I'm saying, like,
looking at
this
some of
looks
these
like
lots
that.
On Colonial Drive, they're 0.19. I mean, they're not.
0.19 acres is right around, I think, 9,000 square feet, maybe a little bit less.
How was that night?
What was I going to say? I like the idea of, well, it could be medium low rural or high medium rural. I do think I think I mentioned this at the last meeting. I think it's very important to take advantage of where services currently go in Montpelier. So that basically leaves rural alone, but I want to see the opportunity for increased infill development, housing development, and density within the spaces that the city provides services: sewer, water, sidewalks.
So where in the city does that kind of
I
run
think
up against it?
I think generally where
Everywhere that's not rural.
well, yeah, and where Maria's map has landed for the most part feels good to me. With some edits that we're discussing currently.
There's some huge lots on Colonial Drive. What is there?
On Colonial Drive?
Yeah.
They're going to be, there are some big ones for the condos, which have required open space provisions for their PUDs and stuff like that. So there are a couple that are quite big, but there also means, as we point out, if the lot sizes are lower, there is the potential for subdivision.
Yeah.
But it's tough because a lot of times these houses were built in the middle of the lots, so it becomes really hard to.
Yeah, they were. That's kind of hard.
Yeah.
It's
kind of hard to see much happening there.
yeah, they're
Except for across from the senior, the independent living. What's this right here too?
I think there's some open space provisions that are in there for some of the condos that's kind of what
Yeah.
is captured in there.
Maria, one thing about yours is that on the the medium density and things, especially in our areas that are currently downtown. So, things around, maybe like St. Paul and Loomis, Liberty area, that having dimensional standards that allow the next step in density, like allowing for like 0 foot side setbacks. You can have a row house.
Right.
And then if that is if that is the standard in your medium density, and then you like, what are people on Colonial Drive going to say about somebody having a 0 foot side setback next door? I don't know. Is it a consideration?
I mean, well, currently I do feel like that Independence Green neighborhood. I'd
That's
love
like a bunch
I'd love a
of
row home. But I feel like that is actually like very accessible housing. It's inexpensive, and just like my love of row homes, they're small and easier to take care of, and they are built right on the road. I think they're just such a useful kind of housing to have. Of course, I mean, the Colonial Drive, that are very different from each other. But the Independence Green, I think,
Well, the Independence Green already has basically condos
right.
out there, quadplex condos.
But they're pretty close to what I would call, or what I call row homes, like attached housing, 2 stories.
Yeah, but a row home would be like you're saying, street facing. It's conceivably it's its own lot, and street facing, and takes a block. You can run a whole block with a row.
Yeah, how these generally run in zoning is through plan unit developments. So you would still have to meet the setbacks at the sides of the properties, but if you had a 2-acre property, you could go in and build a whole lot of townhomes. And that's basically Independence Green, and these other ones you'll find they were put together by if there is any type of row home, it's because it's part of a condo, and they put them all together, and they do a planned unit development and let those properties individually sell as condos, or they subdivide them. So there are ways of doing it, but at the edge of the property, it still has to meet the setbacks. It still has to meet that road setback. So usually you would turn your row homes and face a private street, because you have to meet the setback at the public street. So that's, once you start looking at it, you'll see that's how it's built out. Whether you're talking Murray Hill, Murray Hill has some row homes and condos in there, but they face the private road, not the public street.
I mean, I think the reality is when you look at it, there's not a ton of opportunity for redevelopment there. Again, where Mike kind of highlight, that corridor in, like as you come right into town, that's where there's opportunity for like, hey, could we rethink this, or could we do some infill? But just when you look at what's there, where is the inn is in that part.
Yeah, it's in the Brown, on Route 12. So that's where the existing motel and vacant lot are.
Yeah, I mean, I think Northfield Street has that lower part that we've identified has a ton of potential, because there's the motel, there's those 2 new affordable housing apartment units being built. Once upon a time, I guess there was a restaurant over where there's kind of a lot next to the motel and the church. Like there's a lot.
So
I don't know.
I guess maybe we don't need to worry about this part, and maybe just focus. I mean, you know, whether it's high density, low density, I mean, I just don't think there's anything that's really going to happen there.
There is a potential. I mean, if Peter Kellman were on the phone, he would point out he lives up in this area, on Northfield Street on the other side, Mountain View Drive. That's and the issue on that side has been the utilities. There's only a small water line, so we would need to upgrade utilities. But there are some vacant lots over there, and there was interest from him and some of their neighbors to put in, I think, talking about duplexes, quadplexes, that scale. But the issue he had was there isn't the water capacity, and what he was building wasn't sufficient, because we were talking about these mini TIFs. What he was building wasn't going to
Because it wasn't gonna
develop
pay it
enough
back.
to pay back, and so he would have to pay for the upgrade of the water and the sewer. But when
Okay,
we're
but
looking at this
there's
from
no
a
thought there.
potential,
Yeah.
if that water sewer did get built up, there are some dead end roads out here that have a little bit of room for potential growth. But yes, in the existing already developed out areas, they're kind of constrained unless somebody has an opportunity to take an existing building and knock the roof off and build up, or to build behind it. There are opportunities to go behind buildings, and we'll have to talk about making sure our zoning allows for these. It's a shared driveway that kind of goes back, and you can have additional buildings in the backyard. Again, it changes the character of the neighborhood. If your neighborhood is used to everybody having a backyard, now somebody's backyard has a house. But that's how a lot of places, especially if you were looking in downtown Waterbury, they've got a lot of these narrow, 80-foot wide, couple 100-foot deep lots. So what do? Well, I'm just going to run my driveway out, and I'm going to have an apartment building, an apartment building, an apartment building, with all the driveways on that, and they all just funnel back out onto the street, and it works. But you have to have everybody's got that same character in mind as they're working.
Okay, so we only have like 2 minutes. I was going to point out that I didn't think Prospect Street and I think all of those in my plan would have been the same medium density housing, because I only have
Not the mixed use, but
mixed
the
use on arterials. So like only like Berlin Street would be mixed use.
Yeah.
And the we ended here last time too, but should Gasoline Alley.
I tried carefully not to say that.
We had this idea that it should be riverfront, because it could be put to a better use than gas stations. Although gas stations are permitted, right? Didn't we? We did this research last time.
Yeah,
that-
this is the loop that kind of goes around. Is we only allow gas stations in that area, and so gas stations are allowed in riverfront, but they're only allowed in that one section. So that's why I was always like, it should just be different. It is different. But again, it was the city council themselves that kind of went through and said, but let's look future based. What would we want here? I think it's a little chicken and egg of, is it realistic to think this area is going to change substantially in the future? Or, do we, because things may change over time. So a Domino's pizza goes away and it comes back and it's like, well, we've changed it to riverfront, so now it can't come back as a restaurant, or whatever the situation is. It can't come back as that and now you're like, okay, well, now what's going to happen in this site, because it's kind of set up for that type of use. But that goes back to you guys. That's the what's our future for that area?
Clearly, gas stations are allowed, and I think should be allowed. And I don't think we should be limiting ourselves to that. Thinking along Sean's lines, thinking about the national life, I could imagine, there is actually some housing in that space. It's and there could be more. It could be more dense housing it really is like a mini gateway into our city. So what does a permissive future look like in that space beyond, including but also beyond gas stations?
I mean, I could see if we're putting it into like the permissive zoning category, the Domino's goes away and turns into a 5-story apartment building with a restaurant on the ground floor. That sounds nice.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
it's right next to downtown. The bridge isn't that long.
No, it's very
Certain zoning doesn't prohibit that, right?
Current zoning as riverfront. It's currently
current-
riverfront, yeah.
current is river.
Yeah, I think, yeah, because you could have relatively high densities. 1,500 units, max height 45 feet, so you can get 4 stories.
But what was the type? What do you have it zoned as?
As proposed
Mike put
as
it
gateway.
I have it as gateway. I
Oh, okay.
was accepting that it was going to be what it was. And gateway has flexible uses that it's not.
You could do that same apartment with a restaurant in the bottom.
I would imagine.
Restaurant is conditional in Gateway.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and some of it comes down to also things like drive-throughs. You know, that's what makes some of these a little bit different. Is, you know, we can have Dunkin' drive-through,
Just in that one spot.
but just in that gasoline area.
What is the current difference between Gateway and our permissive zoning district? Is Gateway more industrial?
The maximally.
The maximally permissive
Yes.
district.
The gateways tended to have more allowances for larger uses and auto-oriented, a little bit more auto-oriented.
Mm.
So you could put a car dealership. You can't have car dealerships in
Okay.
some of those areas. You know, self-store units and those types of uses.
That makes
Yeah,
me kind
but-
of want to go back to.
So, but the thing is that, you know, with Mike's new thing, like the industrial stuff is kind of getting carved out of the gateway. So that is going to leave the gateway stuff. So, you know, you're not going to necessarily have permitted manufacturing and light manufacturing, warehouse storage in the gateways anymore. You can still have, and a lot of these other things in gateway are conditional use. So just because you have that ability to do it in the gateway, you know, if it's conditional use, it's still, you know, it can be vetoed, right? If somebody, that you can have these gas stations here, but if somebody were to come in and say, well, you know, gas stations are, like, Domino's are gone, we need another gas station. Say, no,
Right.
we don't. I don't know. If gas station is necessarily the right example, but you know, you're like tank farms are conditional use. And it's like Domino's is gone. We need a tank farm at the old Domino's lot. No,
Right.
we're not doing that.
We're at 7:35.
Yeah.
Just noting.
What was that?
We're at 7:35 currently.
Does anybody have any thoughts about Gasoline Alley being gateway or permissive? That's a no. Is that a no? What are you guys thinking?
I don't have thoughts.
Too
I
late.
think.
Okay. All
I
right.
think we should pick it up next time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll start on the next quadrant, or Aaron can take over this discussion. He might be able to steer us. This is,
Well, I think we've aired a lot of our thoughts on the basic structure. So I think we should be able to move a little bit quicker as we get going, because we've already kind of debated like mixed use residential. Do we want to have 2 mixed use residentials? It kind of sounds like yeah, that's a good potential. And so we don't have to rehash that. We can just go forward. And if it doesn't survive in the end, it doesn't survive in the end, but we can certainly start working through, as you pointed out, we've got two, whether we call them low
Right.
density and medium or medium and high. We're thinking we're going to have two residential districts of varying sizes. Let's start thinking about as we move around the city. We're not talking about adding a third or combining to a one. We kind of said we're going to start to see if we can fit everything into two, and how would that work, and what would that mean for this part of Berlin Street or that part of College Hill. So I think we've kind of worked through a bunch of the mechanics that'll let us start to move a little bit quicker, and then we can try to collect it all, compile it all into a single document, and then kind of hold it back and go and see, all right, well, what does this look like?
Okay. So should, yeah,
What's the scheduled date for the planning commission's recommended package being warned for city council consideration? Is there a target date?
I do not think we have a target date yet. No.
I think it's going to depend on a number of factors, one of which being, are we going to adopt this in pieces, or are we going to, if we're looking at one big, beautiful zoning amendment, it would be, it could take till next year.
Right.
Because we would still have to go through the landscape requirements and the subdivision regulations and all the rest of parts 3 and 4. And it could take a long time. We may have part 2 done relatively soon. We also could sit down and say, let's take this in 3 bites, because we've got a good vision of where we're going with the land use map. Can we make some quick edits downstream so we can adopt this map this year and have that get into effect right away? And then we can go back and say, okay, now it's November, December, we can pick up and start, all right, how do we start to make the provisions in the subdivision regulations or design review or site plan more efficient? But I think if we look for the whole package, I think there's no way the whole package would be in 2026.
Even if we did the short version, you're probably talking later in the fall. Just with all the public, because we have to have 2 meetings, right, right?
Yeah, and we have to finish this, and we've talked about having some public input before we go to public hearing.
Yeah.
So I would think this adoption, if we said, let's target getting part 2 adopted, it would probably be in the fall. And I think what I would probably be in my head, we've got a couple of pieces moving at the same time, one of which is the tier 1A for Act 181. I think I would be trying to make sure whatever we do, we are getting ourselves in the best position to get tier 1A approved. Because I think if we have all these pending zoning changes and we go in to get tier 1A status, they're going to push us back and say, we're not going to give you tier 1A status until we see what you actually finally adopt, because you're in the middle of making big changes. So let's see what the big changes are before we give you those exemptions. So that's just reading the tea leaves. I think if I were sitting on their side, that's what I'd be like, hey, if you're going to change your zoning, let's see what you're doing, and then we'll give you that designation. But I think we'll be in a good place to nail a couple of these down and say, we're just adjusting the maps. The maps are going to be doing X, Y, and Z, but they're not going to do these other things. And therefore you can be comfortable knowing we meet all the requirements of tier 1A.
If that were to occur, which hopefully it will, do you envision that's November timeframe, December timeframe?
I mean, we'll get, I don't know how long the process is to do tier 1A. The tier 1B is relatively quick, but we can't do that until the Regional Planning Commission submits their plan, which I believe they're looking at submitting in, their preliminary maps will be submitted in June. So I think they're hoping to be getting some final maps this fall. So we won't be able to apply for tier 1A until after their final anyways. So we're waiting till this fall before we can even start that process. And then I have to see what's in the tier 1A application. And fortunately, we won't be the first because most of Western Vermont has already gotten Addison and Franklin can already start applying for tier 1A. They've already got tier 1B. They're now going to start applying for tier 1A. So we're going to get the opportunity to see how did that go for them? How did the state interpret those? So that way it'll make it easier for me because I don't have to guess. I can know this is the decision they made for St. Albans. I can be comfortable. This is what the decision they made for Middlebury. This is the decision they made for South Burlington. I can start to read the tea leaves and see where they're going.
Thank you for that concept. Appreciate it.
Okay, does anyone want to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Your next meeting is a holiday, so can we talk about next Monday and when we're gonna meet again?
Usually the Monday meetings get pushed to Tuesday unless everybody's saying I'm on vacation that week and we aren't going to be around.
I'll be around.
Yeah.
Tuesday, the 26th.
Yeah, I'll be
Yeah.
available.
Okay.
A motion to adjourn.
Gabe made
Gabe,
that motion.
second, I second.
Sean seconds.
Aye.
All in favor?
I
Guys.